Hello, Toronto commuters. The city, the Infrastructure Environment Committee, was recently considering these two motions, these two reports about cycling in Toronto. One of them was like the near-term implementation plan for bikeways and stuff, very exciting. Still not really enough to allow drivers to switch to cycling for their commutes for most of the city, especially the suburbs. And then the other one was making the active TO temporary cycling infrastructure permanent. So roads like especially University and Bloor West. And so Deputy Mayor Denzil Minnan-Wong, who's also a councillor, and Councillor Pasternak both voiced some pretty ridiculous objections to these reports, and so I just wanted to mock them a little bit for it. So check it out.
Okay, I'll speak.
I'm here. Anybody see him? Paging Councillor Ainsley?
I heard him.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I'm not in a position to support either of these reports. At a meta level, especially in the suburbs, I don't believe the amount of cycling is anywhere near what people think the cycling is, and it doesn't, deserve the amount of bike lanes that are being built is far out of proportion to demand. I studied this in my ward and found that as their primary mode of travel, about 2 to 3% of people in my ward use cycling, which is a very, very low number. I think that's the same for a lot of suburban municipalities. I think even to the extent if you drive around right now and you go on, I was driving to work and I was going down to the Bayview extension along Dundas. I saw maybe one or two cyclists, and we're spending millions and millions.
The Bayview extension along Dundas. Where the hell is that? The Bayview extension along Dundas. Oh, right, this brand new bike lane that most people don't even know about, right? Yeah. Okay.
Millions of dollars on all of this. I mean, University is a prime example of where we've put in significant infrastructure, and you've got, as I say, a cyclist every minute on University Avenue, yet we take up so much of the road capacity. And then, you sit in...
right, University. Yeah. The temporary bike lane that it took me all summer to even hear about, and I'm somebody who pays close attention to this action. Right. It took me months to even realize that it was there. So when it's, a few months old, most cyclists still don't know about it. He's complaining that there's only one cyclist per minute on. Okay, gotcha.
And I know I'm speaking for a lot of folks who see this every single day. They're sitting on Yonge Street in traffic, waiting and waiting and waiting.
While... Oh, right, Yonge Street. Yeah, the bike lanes that have been in for like a month now. Right. And most people don't even know about them at all. Yeah, those lanes. Right, the ones that aren't even on Google Maps Street View yet. Yeah, those brand new bike lanes. Great bike lanes, by the way. Totally awesome. So glad that they're there. And they allow for a whole new way of getting to and from the downtown. The bike lanes that there is no alternate route to. Mount Pleasant, not cyclable. Avenue Road's not cyclable. And in the past, I'm pretty sure it was Councillor Minnan-Wong, or one of the other councillors anyway, who was saying, why do we need cycling infrastructure? When I'm on Avenue, I never see any cyclists. So why should we be putting it like, of course you don't see any cyclists on Avenue Road. Why would anybody bike this? Like, I know exactly what happens when somebody tries to bike this. It's not good. So yeah, okay, so the bike lanes that are brand new on Yonge that almost nobody has found out about, because people don't, like, keep up to date with it. The average commuter does not watch the forums on every single thing all the time. But yeah, this Yonge Street bike lane is so useful because it connects all the way up to the Beltline path here. So now this whole community suddenly has this really easy way to get downtown. It's awesome. But oh, there's not enough cyclists using it. Drivers are going past it when it's empty, so we got to remove it.
They look to their right, and what do they see? An empty lane that's supposed to have bikes in it that is completely empty. This is not an arrangement I think that a majority of residents in the city of Toronto support. And I'm, mindful of this arrangement where we're dealing with a climate change report and the amount of congestion that this causes and the amount of greenhouse gases that are spewed into the atmosphere because we're all waiting in traffic with our engines turned on instead of proceeding in an efficient manner, either to work or home from work, creates a lot more environmental pollution than it solves. And putting in these bike lanes isn't going to make it any better. I think.
Yeah, I've heard this before. Yeah, I mean, if you've never hung around next to a road with 2 lanes full of idling drivers, and you've never hung around next to a road with 6 lanes of drivers all passing each other and stuff, then maybe you wouldn't notice the tremendous pollution difference, how much more a 6-lane road ends up causing pollution than a 2-lane road, even if there's a bunch of people idling. But they keep, every once in a while you hear this in council, and it's like, wow, they're still saying this crap after 10 years. So anyway, Councillor Minnan-Wong, he doesn't want bike lanes on Yonge, but that's not really what this meeting is about. This meeting is about roads like University, where we got these kick-ass temporary bike lanes that took me forever to know about. Oh wow, there's no cyclists using them. That's crazy. There's just, I guess nobody wants to ride their bikes on University. Even though, yeah, there's no real alternate routes that are any good. I mean, unless you want to go over to Yonge. And there's Beverly, of course. That's useful. But I guess, all the way between Beverly and Yonge Street, councillors like this don't want cyclists to be able to go north and south. They think we're willing to make like a 7-block detour to do it. And they think it's so important to have like 3 lanes going in each direction for drivers. I mean, I've never seen University full. I've hung out next to University when it's 6 lanes and when the traffic is pretty light and it's the evening commute and people are going back and forth and it's a total gas chamber. So, and it's because people are revving their engines passing each other to try and compete for access to the red lights. Because the red lights are so long, because the crossing distances are so long. So, yeah, so he doesn't think that we need bike lanes here because nobody's cycling in his ward. So this is his ward. This is the hilarious part. So, okay, let's see. So because nobody's willing to be cycling all the way over here, let's just drop a random pin around here and see what the situation is like. Gee, I wonder why nobody wants to be a cyclist in his neighborhood. Only 3%. I'd say 3% is pretty impressive given, like, yeah. So there's 3% of people in this ward who actually use their bike as their primary means of transportation. That's impressive, Denzil, Minnan-Wong. Your ward has, like, the closest thing that you'll have to a bike lane in your ward is this, like, HOV lane, which only during rush hour is only for buses, taxis, car sharing, motorcycles, and bicycles. So yeah, this is such a crappy idea that like this is actually supposed to be cycling infrastructure. Nobody's going to ride their bike in the bus lane. That's completely crazy. I've had so much fun cycling through Denzil Minnan-Wong's ward on the Don Valley path, and then I try to get out of it to go home, and man, it is just so terrible as soon as you get off the path. It's like, oh wow, this looks like a nice little neighborhood. I can just take these neighborhood streets all the way home. This is going to be all good. Oh, this is great. No problem. And then you're like, oh, right. This is good thing I don't have to take any roads like this to go where I'm, wanting to go. There's all sorts of side streets that form a connected secondary network. Oh, except no, there's not. They don't link up. Even the driving situation here sucks. Like, let's say I'm living in this little neighborhood. I want to visit this little neighborhood. Well, that's not so bad on the highway. And there's these pass-through roads. So there's some connectivity that would allow for some cycling here. If you're the type of cyclist who, is down with sharing these sort of tunnels with drivers. Yeah, that's really surprising. I mean, they've been, the anti-cycling politicians have been doing this for years where they're like, well, the demand is represented by the current usage. And that's completely nuts. So neither of the reports that he's talking about actually provide for any infrastructure in his ward. The only cycling infrastructure that's going to be going into Denzil Minnan-Wong's ward is maybe on Eglinton when the Crosstown LRT is finished. And he really doesn't have anything to do with that. This is like a citywide project that Metrolinx on the city are doing. So he hasn't lifted a finger to help cyclists in his ward. He's made sure nothing's going in, and he's saying that the current usage represents the current demand. So he's saying, oh, well, nobody wants to bike in places like this, so we don't need the cycling infrastructure to remain in places like this. Like, dude, start making sense at some point, please. Please start making sense. And the people on the Toronto Car People Facebook page, they're always saying, oh, we have no representation. The people in City Hall have totally sold us out. No, guys, you've got a friend in Deputy Mayor Denzil Minnan-Wong. He's standing up against the bike lanes here because nobody wants to bike out in his neighborhood. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, because there's no cyclists currently here, we gotta not have the bike lanes maintained all the way over here. I mean, I guess he's like, well, you can't bike out of my ward to get to the downtown. So since all my residents must drive to the downtown, we got to make sure there's no bike lanes on University. So I guess that's the closest he comes to making any sense. So moving on to Councillor Pasternak, celebrating that Finch Avenue is not going to get any bike lanes and that they're just repainting sharrows.
I guess it's appendix. No, it's on the main report when it comes to page 4, Finch Avenue West. I guess it's west of Chesswood to Alexton Road. Are those sharrows that are going in there? That's not an on-street segregated bike lane.
The chair, that's actually, thank you, Councilor Pasternak. That is a bylaw cleanup. And so they do already have bike lanes on the corridor. They were just not properly bylawed in chapter 886 where we bylaw our bike lanes.
Right. So that, I mean, I've gone that route before. The sharrows are all faded. Is this project just a matter of repainting them?
Yes, we'll just refresh and ensure that the bylaws match with what is out on the corridor.
All right, so we're not putting up barriers, concrete barriers, or bollards, or...
No, there's no proposal to change the configuration as
okay,
it is.
so that's good news. So...
Oh, that's good news. Wow. Thank you so much. Okay, so these sharrows, utterly useless. Nobody's going to use these. What a total joke. What an absolute joke. On this 5 to 6 lane road. Oh yeah, no, we got to make sure not to have... Oh, well, they do have some bike lanes here. Look at that. And they maintain them so well. Look at that. Oh, wow. No need for separation here. That's garbage. Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, you can totally claim that you've done your part. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we got to block off the road here. Make sure that these bike lanes are super narrow and don't have any barriers. And make sure that you've got to go through some terrible spot like this to get to them. And what a good piece of news it is that this is not going to be separated or whatever, that they're just maintaining these sharrows. Thanks so much, Councillor Pasternak. What a hero. Totally ridiculous. Can't believe that this is the level of discussion that is happening among our councillors and politicians. And they want to look at places like this and say, like, well, nobody wants to bike here, so I guess there's no demand for cycling. I guess cycling's not popular. I guess we don't need to lift a finger to help it. This is just a continuation of the old, like, oh, it's this sort of circular stinking thinking of like, oh, it's not popular enough to warrant making it safe enough for it to become popular enough to warrant making it safe enough for it to become popular enough. Ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. So this stuff is going to City Hall in the middle of the month. And then they're going to decide on it on a bunch of changes that are great and still do not give people in the suburbs the opportunity to switch to their bikes. In a city where all over the whole mega city, the biggest user group of commuters has expressed demand for bike lanes, and that is the drivers who are sick of being forced to drive everywhere. This is my coworker who all he needs is bike lanes on St. Clair and Jane, and he can switch to biking to work. This is me. All I need is, I mean, I'm cycling to work every day, going twice the distance that I should need to, taking extra time that I should need to, because we're not going to have a bike lane on Jane anytime soon. This is like all the cyclists that I know from the past who have all switched to driving because they've realized, like, okay, yeah, the city's not really going to make this possible for me. Look at all these little disconnected bits and pieces of cycling infrastructure. And then meanwhile, on all these side streets, it's totally excellent for cycling, but you got to go across all these main streets, use a bunch of these main streets. So this report, both of these reports, these councillors want to act like it's making it impossible to drive. And still, none of it is going to touch any of this over here. This whole area is still going to be uncyclable. This whole area is still going to be uncyclable. Nobody can switch to their bikes for any of this stuff. So yeah, they are letting drivers down. Because most of our drivers want to switch many of their trips over to cycling, and they're not going to be able to. So yeah, they're going to be driving past these underused bike lanes because the bike lanes are for the future when there's more of a connected cycling network. I mean, that just gives them more time to remove bike lanes as well. They're like, oh, we'll put these in so that one day when it's connected up to a network, they'll be useful. And then before that happens, they're like, well, nobody's using them, let's remove them. And this keeps happening. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So hopefully City Council does go ahead with these near-term implementation plans so that we can continue with this incremental nonsense. And, it will make things better, especially since, like, university is a great cycling route. Maybe in a in a while, people will start using it because they'll realize it's there. Same with the Bayview extension. Like, that's awesome. Took me months to find out about it. Took me months to find out about university. Took me months to find out about Yonge Street. And the deputy mayor wants people to, know about it right away and flood it right away. Like, no. And he wants to act on downtown stuff based on what's going on in his ward. Ridiculous. Anyway, have some good commutes, all of y'all. And for the Toronto car people and the Toronto Car People Facebook group, don't worry, you are well represented on our infrastructure committee, not by people who are using any real logic, but and I'm sure we'll have more of the same nonsense when City Council reviews this in the middle of the month. I'm just looking forward to hearing all about how bike lanes produce more greenhouse gas emissions, about how when we force people to drive and nobody's cycling, we need to keep making sure that nobody can use their bikes so that we can keep saying cycling's unpopular. I mean, at least they're not talking about cyclist licensing anymore. At least that's been finally laid to rest. All right, ciao, Bella.